Freeze the rent has been a huge pull for Zohran Mamdani's campaign, driving Gen Z with hopes and dreams of free stuff, driving them to the polls. But like most of us, we learned at a young age, there's no such thing as free. Somebody else has to pay for it. And as the saying goes, the problem with socialism, that eventually you run out of other people's money. It's exactly what mom and pop landlords are worried about. Mamdani's housing policy could destroy their businesses and dry up all the funds. Small landlords are already reeling from higher inflation, steeper mortgage rates, not being able to raise rents to keep up with rising costs, maybe the nail in the coffin. That means no money for renovations, improvements, or expansion. It will also make it nearly impossible for owners to sell in this city. Kevin, this will fall on deaf ears, these cries for please don't.
So pragmatically, I and others who invest in real estate have tried to get a meeting to figure out what's rhetoric and what's policy. So far for me, it's been crickets. I think it's a mistake on his part. I'm a rational person. I'm only interested in one thing, and I think he has to address this. I get it what he's doing on the rhetoric, everything for free and rents don't go up. What happens on new builds? We need to build a new building. So let's say we need 20% more affordable housing. Love to invest in that. So we go to the debt and we go to the equity markets to do that. So my simple question to him is, look, I understand what you're trying to do, and you got to get elected, but tell me how you're going to do this. I got to put $50 million into a building to build it, just to get it going. And the market's going to want probably somewhere between an 8 and 11% return on the construction financing. And then when I stabilize it, they'll be happy with 7-8% return. You're telling me I have to have frozen rent rates, even going into 3% inflation. How am I going to be able to raise any money for a new build? Not just me, anybody. How can anybody, including you, by the way, you, Mr. Free for Everything guy, how are you going to get that money out of the market when the return is negative? Now, what is the answer to that? Because people should ask themselves, how are we going to get a new building to live in or to have an office in or a store in the city of New York, which is in itself a country, when there's a zero return policy, a negative return policy on capital? Now, that's what's going on here. So if you're thinking of voting for this guy, you're going to continue to live in rat holes as they deteriorate, but worse, there'll be no new builds.
Right.
Zero.
Yeah.
So I think he should, maybe not me, doesn't want to talk to me, no problem.
He doesn't want to talk to you because he can't answer that question. Like,
Well,
there's no answer to the question you just posed to him.
I've got,
that
you
he
know
will
what
have
what I want to do to him is sit him down and say, look, I got millions of followers, great American entrepreneurs, families, millions of them. You don't have to go on TV and talk about this. Come on my TV. Let's just record an interview together, and I'll post it, and you explain what you're going to do here to attract capital. I'm the first $1 million check.
You know, there is a affordable housing industry in New York. A friend of mine is a builder of that sort of stuff. It's incredibly complicated. I'm not going to profess any knowledge of it. There is a way to get a VIG out of it, okay, to get some money out of it. And it's incredibly tedious. It's tedious. There's a lot of different government agencies you have to.
Not when there's a 0% chance of raising rents against inflation.
But you know, we don't. It's hard for him to raise rents as it. If raise rents as it, I'm not defending him, by the way. He's just going to make it worse. The question is not to add to the system that is already in place now. Is how do you free markets to build stuff? Because there is land there's marshlands in the Bronx. Why can't we build some affordable housing there? Well, there's environmental problems with that. So there's a lot of issues here that Zohran Mamdani literally skips over and says, "I'll just give it to you for free."
Yeah, well, it's also something that we know doesn't work. These policies have been tried before. I'm just going to read.
You know it doesn't work.
Well,
his voters don't know it
Not only do I, but the New York Times editorial board in the 1990s wrote, "Rent control perpetuates the very problems it's designed to fix, a housing shortage."
Yeah.
That was the New York Times. Now, of course, they've gotten all squishy on the subject and forget what the common sense that they had back in the 1990s. But the point is, we have a rental vacancy rate of 1.4%. That means there's very few rental properties available right now. We have to incentivize people like Kevin and people like the folks you know to build more rental properties, and they're just not going to do it if there's any, even with the current regulations on rent stabilization, we're going to have problems. But so there has to be more incentivization, not perverse incentives that he wants to add on top of this big cake of regulations.
The strategy of these leftists is to fail up. So he comes in and he's mayor of New York City, and he puts these policies in place, and it takes a period of years for them to really show themselves. And by the time that's happening, he's already moved on to run for governor. And somebody else comes into New York City and has to try to figure out how to make sense of this. He doesn't have answers to your questions. He doesn't look at a 135-pound bar on a bench press and understand the implications of that. There's no way he understands what you're talking about. So he just doesn't answer. And I know, I agree, we understand what rent control does, but I am telling you, the people in the city who love him do not get it.
And by the way,
they do not get it, and they think he's just going to figure it out. Those are their words. He'll figure it out.
Well, remember, rent control, it's rent stabilization. Rent control is a portion of it. Is a state law, okay? It's approved.
How's it working out?
Not very well. And want to hear something really interesting? So Andrew Cuomo, who I personally really like, went after Mamdani on living in a rent-stabilized apartment. We should point out that 50% of all apartments, almost every apartment in New York is some sort of stabilization, except for the very high end, right? And obviously it doesn't affect housing ownership. So he goes after him on rent stabilization, saying, "Oh, you know, you make $150,000 a year as a congressman or what, assemblyman, and your wife is rich, and you shouldn't be able to live in a place for $2,500 a month." What Cuomo left out is that he took away some of the caps on rent stabilization that would have forced Mamdani to pay what's known as a market rate on that apartment, because Andrew Cuomo took away the cap.
That market rate's probably $7,500.
By the way, I still don't understand how a poor person, and this is what I'm going to ask Andrew this. How does a poor person, because he mentioned a single mother, poor single mother, she should be in that apartment. How does she afford $2,500 a month rent? It's still too high.
She can't. She's got to move in with family.
Yeah, that's the whole
thing. They're trying to accommodate everybody to live in the most expensive city to live in. And it's impossible, particularly as we're going to see people like Kevin and other entrepreneurs move out of the city.
Wait till everybody
all
leaves,
these new regulations.
then she can afford that apartment, because people are going to leave.
All the tax money is going away.
It's really a plea to New Yorkers. Let me invest in you. Let investors like me invest in you. Do not let this guy become your mayor until he explains what's rhetoric and what's policy. I believe in rhetoric. I think politicians should say anything they want during a campaign if they think they can win. But what's the real policy? And he won't meet with any of us. None of us.
He did meet with some business leaders. I will say this. He's not that much different than the rank and file Democrats in this city and state, just so you know. Not that much different.
Look, Charlie, it doesn't have to be me. Just meet with anybody, and then that person
I'm just
tell
telling
us what he's
you,
doing.
you as a businessman, if you're thinking of putting money here, say Mamdani loses.
I want to.
Say Mamdani loses and Cuomo gets in there, or Eric Adams, or maybe Curtis. Take Curtis out because he'll be much more free market. If you have a Democrat, a conventional Democrat in that seat, he's never going to govern that much different than Mamdani. He's literally the tip of the spear of something much bigger.
Would he give me a permit? Would he let me at least raise rents to inflation?
Maybe.
Well, that's a real gift.
Would they?
Remember, he also hates cops. He hates cops. The hatred was just spewing out of his Twitter posts of a couple of years ago. Now he claims that he's fine with them, but after a cop was killed the other week. But this guy hates police, and he still wants to de-police our city. He wants to get rid of jails, the whole shebang.
He's a very bad guy to be in office. We all know that. I'm just telling you, in this state, knowing what I know about state politics, he's really not he's really part of the norm.
After having said all this stuff about him, let's invite him to the panel here.
I've tried. He never calls me. He doesn't return calls.
You can use my name.
Right. Trust me on this.
That and 250 will get him into the subway.
He's not exactly like giving interviews out, except for to maybe, I don't know.
I've tried to staff. I've done everything I can, and it's been crickets. Crickets.